Welcome to Thriving Entrepreneur with your host, Steve Kidd, third-generation minister and 30-year business coach. Listen in as amazing, world-changing authors, speakers, and coaches share their struggles and victories. And hear from best-selling authors' insight into how you too can live your life as a thriving entrepreneur.
This is Steve. Welcome to Thriving Entrepreneur. Thanks for being with us here today. We're going to talk about creating value. How do you create value in all that you do? How do you use who you are and what you do to create value? Today we want to talk about ways that people are creating value, give you some great guests that are creating value and show you how they create value. And we want to allow you the opportunity to be able to look at what you're doing in life and ask yourself, how do I create value as you work and live and be a thriving entrepreneur? We have 4 amazing guests for you. In fact, so good that we're going to run this without commercials between them. I'll pop in and say howdy to you and just kind of segue between the two of them. But other than that, we're just going to jump in and really talk with these 4 guests about how to create value here on Thriving Entrepreneur. With that said, let's jump right in. Join me in welcoming Shawn Anthony. Hey, Shawn, how you doing today?
Hey, Steve, I'm excited to be here, man. Let's make this thing happen. Hope you're doing well today.
Doing great, thanks. Tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yeah, man. I'm a kid from Rocky Mount, North Carolina, who managed to make it out, and I show up in the world as authentically who I am. You know, I'm a connector. I'm someone who is constantly thinking about what could be best for almost every individual that I meet, and trying to help others through the power of connection. I've been able to be pretty successful in terms of podcasting, in terms of launching Pod Pro Max, and impacting a lot of people in networking.
Love that. So what kind of things do you love doing every day that you just wish are the thing you could do all day long?
Wow, that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I'm fortunate enough to do all day long, and that I love doing, is I actually really like hustling and getting into the work and understanding strategies that I may not have never applied, that I need to know about, and people I need to, learn about. That fascinates me. There's billions of people on the planet, and I think so often people get, stuck into the people within their proximity, their locals, restaurants, their local schools, their, state, their side of the coast. And there's power in understanding that there is more out there, and the world's a beautiful place. So I definitely would say that.
That's great. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about the kind of connections that you make and stuff like that. Do you find that it's just something that you do naturally, or is there an intentional process that you use?
Yeah, I think the best connectors are people who genuinely care, right? They just genuinely care. There's no prerequisite. There's no classification or qualification of what's working and what's not working. So for me, I really truly believe it comes down to doing things that just feel authentic. And I think that's the recipe for success. And I think it comes natural for me, that I'm constantly doing that. And I think the part that makes me realize that it's beyond just being natural is I'm not even trying. And I think that's the indicator for someone who's looking for that level of success.
I love this concept that I was reading in your speaker one sheet. It was talking about the concept of school's over, so now what? What are the kind of things that you'd love to help people with when they're kind of jumping out into the world for the first time and really maybe don't have an idea where to go next?
Yeah, I think some of those things that I really, really am enjoying, and when they don't understand what's next, is understanding that there might be something that they did as a kid that was truly the meaning of what was next for them in life. They were just unable to connect the dots. So when I was 14, I became really well known from throwing parties. My first party that I ever threw, I threw a high school graduation party at the age of 14, and I made $6,000. And Steve, that turned me into a huge networker, a huge marketer. I went on to college, and I went to college not to get the education, which I did get, but I went to college honestly to make money. And I picked a location that there was nobody doing what I was doing, and I went there and I assembled a street team of 30 people. It was 30 college students that I had beating and knocking down on doors, talking about, can you come out to our parties tonight, right? And that really birthed, a longevity in just watching how people navigated through school and throughout school. And what I found out was after about, 4 years of throwing parties, we all started to graduate and started to leave and go back to our hometowns. And I used that transferable skill and I went corporate. And I became, someone known in the brand management space. And so I was a brand manager for companies like Macy's, Target, Belk, and I did all these things. And I looked around and none of my friends were successful. And they were all asking the question that, the podcast is named after. And that's school's over, now what? Right. And so I then realized, okay, how can I impact people that look like me, but also people who are afraid to answer that question? And the way I did that was sitting down and interviewing successful, like-minded people.
If you could go back and you could talk to, the you in college, what are some of the kind of skills that you could have done that I'm sure you do now that could have helped those folks that were your street team, really be networking and marketing experts themselves so they could have graduated and gone out and really hit the ground running like you did?
Yeah, man, that's a phenomenal question. No one's ever asked me that. And I think, looking back now, I think we kind of all underestimated who was the person standing to the left or standing to the right of us. I think we underestimated that, hey, this guy who does not look like the coolest kid in the cafeteria is going to go on to be the CEO of a company that could have used my expertise. Or, or this girl who, we just see her as someone that's on a track team or someone that is a cheerleader. We didn't realize that we were looking at a professional athlete the entire time. And there's something that we could have done while in school to show that, hey, look, we could build and grow together. And I think that's what I would, tell my younger self in those college situations, and people that were a part of that street team now looking back, is the connections that you are making right now can change your life if you hold on to them the correct way.
So, I mean, it's such a great point because people come into our lives and they aren't necessarily, the specifically I'm just drawn to this person kind of person. They're a little different than you. Maybe they look different. Maybe they sound different. Maybe they are, really super massively geeky intelligent, whatever
Yeah.
that might be that's different than you. How do we learn the skill of creating a real true connection with somebody who's truly different than what just comes naturally to us?
Yeah, I think the way you learn that skill is the skill needs to be led with curiosity. And sometimes curiosity, people confuse curiosity with asking good questions. Curiosity is much, much deeper than just asking good questions. Curiosity might be words unspoken that have caused you to be curious, to look deeper and understand the meaning of why someone thinks the way they think or moves the way they move. There are people that I look up to and I admire that I'm chasing in terms of success that I have never sat down with. But my curiosity has led me to listening to interviews of how, they thought about certain situations, environments, deals, brands, all those things. And I think that is the deeper meaning. I think that's what people need to truly understand, is the power of curiosity and understanding it comes in many different facets and forms.
I love that word curiosity because I think all too often, there's that old saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. So if you're not going to do that, then the only thing that you can do is be curious, and really go beyond whatever cover a person might have on them.
100% agree with that. Color is nice as far as giving you, features and identifying, maybe some of your physical traits. But at the end of the day, man, none of this attractiveness lasts forever. None of it. No matter who you're looking at, it's not going to last forever. I think the main thing is what's the impact that you're trying to make? What are, there's so many bright minds right now who suffer from inaction. I'll show you someone who's failed. Show me someone who's overly planning. Just show me a planner. There's somebody right now who's not planning a single thing. They're just being actionable. And I think those are the ones who will succeed.
Oh, I like that. I mean, all too often we talk so much about the planning and the systems and all those kind of things. I mean, where's the balance? Is there a balance, or should we just, be ignorance on fire, if you will?
I think they're really. I was sitting down with a guy who I admire, who I have been looking up to for a very long time. I was sitting down with a guy by the name of Ed Milet, and I sat down with Ed Milet in Laguna Beach. I was interviewing him back in 2019, and I asked a very similar question. I said, "Hey, man, I want to know balance. Where's the balance?" He said, "Man, the balance does not exist." Why I truly believe that's true is because even when we are attempting or acting as if we are moving in balance, we're still mentally thinking about other things. When you think about when you think about the time you might spend with a loved one, or the time you might spend watching Netflix with someone you care about, if you really are someone who's going to change the world, in the back of your mind, you're probably thinking about a project that you want to work on. You're probably thinking about something that you forgot about. You might not mention it, or you might not grab that laptop, but you're thinking about it. So I think balance is something that does not truly exist. I think you have to find those pockets of time to make the most of the moments.
There is somebody's parent right now that is just so angry with you that you just said balance doesn't exist.
You know what? It's so funny, right? What's so funny in terms of balance and balance, me saying it doesn't exist. I actually, I am a parent. I'm a parent of four. And I think there's something that comes to anyone's mind. When you look at parents and you look at parenting, we often think about, okay, how am I a good dad, or how am I a good mom, or I don't have any experience. I don't matter what your age is. You can be a parent that's 30 years old, a parent that's 50 years old, but anybody that is a parent of multiple children can probably speak on any topic when it comes to whether or not balance has existed in their lives.
Well, and I think the reality of it is, if you don't mind, Shawn, I'll use a Bible verse. There's an old Bible verse that says, train up a child in the way that they should go.
Proverbs 22:6.
There you go. And I think that's, as parents, my kids are all grown now, so it's kind of on them now. But as parents, it's really our responsibility to not make them, experts at everything, but really just encourage them to explore the things that they're interested in, and then help them really go for the things that they are good at. Even if it's something that, maybe we wouldn't particularly enjoy ourselves, if we see that spark in them, to really encourage that in them.
Yeah, man, I would 100% agree with that. I think, one of the hardest things about parenting, honestly, man, is understanding that the child that you're trying to teach has not reached the mental capacity of maybe the way you're communicating with them. So your expectation level is so high, and you're wondering, why are you not listening to me? Or why are you not paying attention? Or why, when I say certain things, you don't understand them the way I want you to? And it's because their mental capacity, man, the mental capacity of a 2-year old, a 4-year old, a 6-year old, to even think or respond the way you want, it's just isn't there yet. So what I've learned with parenting is that you have to give yourself a lot of grace. You have to give yourself a lot of grace and understand you're learning too.
I love that. We could go on for so many hours. I love this conversation, Shawn. But let's be good teachers. Let's give people that are listening one thing that they could do to begin to start making some really genuine connections with the people that they come in contact with.
Yeah, here's how you make really genuine connections with people you come in contact with. I want you to go through some of those new connections that you're making. And if you're making these connections via social, let's say Instagram, I want you to identify a photo of that person who you just made a connection with that truly represents them. That, truly you look at it, you're like, okay, that's that person. You should save those photos into a tab on Instagram. You click that thumbnail button, you can save it, you can bookmark it, and you should call it something and be intentional. I like to call mine the 15-minute connect. And what I would do with these, individuals that are in this particular tab is one time a week, I would spend, 15 minutes connecting with all those people, you know, meaningful connections. And I think you just have to think about who are you being in contact with right now? Who are you seeing that you just haven't just talked to? There's probably a lot of similarities.
That's perfect. Well, before I let you go, tell us how people that want to go deeper with you could work with you.
Absolutely. Well, podcasting changed my life. It became a six-figure side hustle back in 2019. We launched it in 2018, and it changed everything we did. And because of the power of podcasting, I know what it can do for others who have voices and have, different things they want to talk about, things they want to teach. So we launched Pod Pro Max. So that's podpromax.com. We have the ability to edit all of your podcasts, have the ability to publish it for you, create the social media content. And if you're truly ready to be on many more stages, we also have a talent management aspect where we find, some of the best shows that we feel like are perfect for our clients, and we introduce them to them. And so that's something that you want to, look at or be a part of. Visit poppermax.com. And always, you could definitely check out the podcast that I created in 2018. School's over now, on all podcast platforms. But some of my favorite people, Ed Milet, Seth Godin, Matthew Knowles, Amy Porterfield, and many more.
And just one last time, that's podpromax.com, podpromax.com. Well, Shawn, I appreciate all that you're doing in the world. Thanks so much for being with us here on the show today.
Thank you, man.
If you don't have a podcast, haven't been on a podcast, or aren't considering podcasts, I would strongly encourage you to look at how you can create value through a podcast, through being on podcasts, and how you can be a thriving entrepreneur. With that said, let's jump right into our next guest. Join me in welcoming Brittany Fairweather. Hey, Brittany, how you doing today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really good, thanks. So first off, tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
So I am the Chief Business Development Officer for TRX Capital. We are a private money lender focusing on working with real estate investors nationwide. And we lend on all classes of residential assets, multifamily and single family. So professionally, that is who I am and what I do. I am also a mother of 4 beautiful children, and I live in the, right now, quite cold Pennsylvania.
Seems like it's just cold everywhere right now.
Yeah, it has been. Unfortunately. Yeah, I was actually at a conference earlier this week in Vegas, and it was rainy and cold, just not very fun at all.
No kidding. We scheduled it for Vegas so that we could get away from the cold, and then it didn't work.
Right.
So let's talk about, financial investing, specifically in real estate and stuff. Talk to us first about what kind of people are capable of doing that kind of thing.
Anybody is capable of investing in real estate, and anyone should be able to have access to investing in real estate. That's one of the things that we really like to focus on with our company, with our platform, is the education behind how you can get started and why to get started in investing in real estate, and how you can really grow your wealth for yourselves and generational wealth as well, to be able to really have the ability to tap into that as an alternative investment source, rather than, the things that people typically would think of as investments that they have access to.
No, I know typically a lot of people think that they have to have, a certain relatively substantial amount of money in order to be able to start doing it. What can the lower end, if you will, people that want to get involved with that, how can they be involved then in real estate investing?
So it's as simple as having some savings, truthfully. I always tell people that real estate is an incredible asset to invest in. And the best way, in my opinion, to get started is if you don't have the ability to buy a home for yourself to live in, is to buy a home that you can rent out. It's fairly cut and dry. There are so many amazing resources, from property managers to licensed contractors that can help with um, every element of the life cycle of a real estate investment. And it's not as difficult to get started as many people think. The barrier to entry really is not that great. And it doesn't really take a lot. I mean, really, to qualify from a financial perspective, the credit score is important, just as with any mortgage. For a loan, we can really get creative, because we are an alternative lender as opposed to a traditional bank. And then on top of that, really, it's looking at what the liquidity is that you as an investor will have. You have to be able to bring some closing costs into the deal and have a few months of reserves. But the beautiful thing about a rental property is it should cash flow itself. And so you should be able to count on that rental income to pay for the mortgage. And that's really how we underwrite and qualify. And because of that, there really is not a super high liquidity requirement, from an investment perspective, that you really need to get started.
Okay, so here's a curveball for you. I live in the state of Kansas, and we have some properties here that are really amazingly low priced, especially compared to Vegas and California and places like that. Can you do loans for, or does there need to be a minimum price to the house before you can do a loan?
So there is a minimum. We generally will not do a rental loan on a property that is valued at less than $100,000. But that still opens up quite a bit of the country. You're definitely not going to get a rental property for $100,000 in California, but in Kansas, Jackson, Mississippi, lots of places in the country where I have clients who have small portfolios of rental properties, and they are definitely in the lower value price point, and they all are occupied by great long-term tenants. Usually those are workforce type tenants, whether they be located close to a hospital for nurses or a factory for workers that would be that would be working in the factory. And so those are the types of tenants that we see in some of those houses. And they are great long-term tenants, and the properties cash flow, and they are very easy for us to underwrite. So definitely not something that scares us.
I love that. So on a day-to-day basis, how are you involved specifically in this stuff?
So I'm in charge of business development. So I work with our investors, both that provide us the capital to lend, and then I also work with the investors that borrow the capital from us. So usually most of my day is spent talking to our clients that are borrowing capital from us, looking at deals with them, working with our team, trying to make sure that the underwriting is going to be check all the boxes that we need to check, and get creative if we need to get creative on how to structure something that's going to really be the best type of loan for the ultimate investor. So we can work with general contractors who are building new homes. We can work with people who are buying existing assets. And so I kind of work on both sides of the coin, but really mainly focusing on working with the investors who are borrowing from us and looking at their portfolios and understanding how to maximize what they have invested in and what they have access to, so that they can achieve whatever their goals are, whether that be growing their portfolio or adding a different market to their portfolio, or even a different type of asset.
That's a lot of fun. So what's the information that you wish people knew before they started with you so that you could really help them out?
I would say I wish people knew that they should invest early and invest young if they can. Even my own experience as an investor, I wish that I had the foresight to, buy the first property that I rented for myself, instead of renting for so long and then not being able to have that asset, because then I could have kept that, refinanced, put a tenant in there myself, and then grown my portfolio and grown my my assets a little bit earlier in life. And so that's something I would say I wish people really knew, is that they should invest early and invest young if they can.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I mean, a great concept of even say, for example, a duplex, and then you live in one of it and have the other part pay for some part or all of it for you. That's a great thing to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, and we talked about what they should know. What is the number one thing that you want to teach them once they come to you?
Always work with a licensed professional, where licensing is required. We, little side story, my company had a brief moment in time where we were flipping properties, and we've been in this business for a long time. We thought that we kind of knew it all and thought that we could eyeball some expenses, and really learned a lot of hard lessons. And we do not like to flip properties anymore because we are not good at it. But always work with someone who's, especially when you're looking at renovations or any kind of work to be done to the property. Get referrals, work with a licensed professional that's not going to kind of cut corners, because that's really, really important.
I always say everybody should get at least one practice house before they do a renovation on their own. Or,
Yeah.
it's all those things that you then look at the house when it's completed and wish you would have known before you started, that now really can't do because you've already redone all of it.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Very
that's
true.
awesome. So, you said you like working with everybody, but is there kind of a perfect person you just really love working with?
I really love working with our general contractor clients. Um, I feel like we can add the most value to their businesses. So we have a client, an investor that we were working with, a builder that we were working with in Florida, and they were building for other investors, and we were looking at their portfolio and looking at the things that they were building, and they were building for other people who were keeping properties for rentals, not for homeowners. And we kind of said, well, why wouldn't you build a few for yourself, keep them? Like, we qualified you as a contractor, we know that you are an amazing home builder. Why not take a look at the opportunity to keep one of those or two of those, and get a professional property manager, and build your own generational wealth for your family? And the contractor has a couple young kids, his wife manages the back office, and they were just such a rewarding group of people to work with, because we could really add value to their life, their family, their business. And so I would say that I think working with our general contractors is probably my favorite, and the local general contractors, because it's so important to be able to keep local job creation, and create local home ownership, and housing opportunities. So that's really my favorite.
I love that. So, for the person who would like to get more information from you and work deeper with you, how can they get in contact with you?
So we are on social media, Instagram, Brittany Fairweather and TRX Cap Fund, and also on LinkedIn. And you can reach me by email at Brittany, BRITTNEY at trxcapfund.com.
I love that. Well, before I let you go, just give us some encouragement that even if you've never been investing, that this would be an option for you to be able to get started.
Yeah, absolutely. There's never a bad time, really, to start educating yourself on how you can start investing in real estate, whether that's buying your first home and understanding the programs available for a new homeowner, or buying your first investment property and really just taking a look at what the total requirements are. There's never never a wrong time to start the education, and then you'll have the information that you need to know. You can start building up your little nest egg, and then you'll have all the tools that you can put that goal into reach.
I love that. Well, Brittany, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
It always surprises me the cool ways that people help other people find money and the ways that people find money to fund the endeavors that they're doing. There might be some great opportunities out there for you, and more than anything, you can see it as another way that you could create value and live as a thriving entrepreneur. Here's our next guest. Join me in welcoming Greg Sobiech. Greg, thanks for joining us. Tell us first a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Well, hey, Steve, thank you for having me on. This question of how I show up in the world, there are so many different ways to interpret it. I think that right now, I do my best at showing up as someone who wants to support others and unpack possibilities in those around me, whether that's my family or my friends or my teammates. I know obviously when I was starting my career in marketing 25 years ago, it was all about me. But right now, I think increasingly it's all about getting others to their goals.
Totally makes sense. So what is the part of marketing that you do that you really love doing the most?
I think right now, given where I am on my career journey, the thing I'm really obsessed about is understanding how marketers who work for brands enable those brands to truly understand how they create value for the consumers that they serve. So, when I look at some iconic brands like Patagonia is a great example because it's such an easy example. Anyone can make a jacket for skiing or, pants for running. And I happen to use many of their products, and I live in Boulder, Colorado, and this is basically Patagonia country. So that's why Patagonia also comes to mind. But someone like Patagonia, they know exactly who they stand for and who their consumer is. And I'm pretty certain that people that work for Patagonia are all obsessed with the outdoors. The brand is obsessed with the outdoors and being environmentally conscious. And the people who buy from Patagonia their product, all of that resonates with their target audience. And to me, that's a great example of a well-executed product market fit, where the team that works there is also part of that puzzle. So I'm really passionate about working with brands and helping brands almost like tap into their super fans. And that's what we call the sweet spot that the brand can occupy at Delph. So how do we help brands? How do I help brands really understand who their super fans are and what they need to stand for? And therefore, how do they need to orchestrate their technology stack, that's ad tech, martech, use their first party data to identify who their best customers are, and then actually activate those insights in advertising and marketing to drive performance, to drive growth, to drive increased market share.
So how does a person who has really narrowed down who their ideal client is, how do they go about really figuring that out?
So, there are different ways to define who my best client is, or, in our world, I would call it who my super fan is, right? And because we are all here at Delph ultimately pretty geeky, and I wear that as a badge of honor, and very obviously data driven, because everything we do is just based on numbers. To us, someone who's a super fan or best customers is someone who ultimately generates most value for the brand. So, if I used again Patagonia as an example, in the case of Patagonia, the perfect super fan or high value customer is someone who shares who allocates an outsized share of their wallet on buying products from Patagonia as often as possible. That is someone who just really loves the brand, who likes the product, with whom the brand value proposition resonates. And this person will end up spending most of their disposable income that they allocate towards these kinds of purchases with Patagonia. Their lifetime value, at the end of the day, should be higher than somebody else's lifetime value if that other person, isn't as in love or as interested in Patagonia's value proposition and the product. So superfan is someone, or best customer is someone who decides to allocate a share of wallet with that brand, with that one brand.
That makes a lot of sense. So if we do know who our ideal client is, what do we really do to engage with them? Are we still using social media, or are we going back to more and more one-on-one stuff, or what is really working these days to reach out and talk to that ideal client?
Great question. I think it starts, as always in life, with fundamentals. And how we operate is we will often talk to a brand that may want to spend their advertising budget, in a way that's smarter, where that budget works harder. Every marketer wants to squeeze more performance from the budget that they are a steward of, that they're watching over, and that's just are always the right intention. So how do you get more performance out of that budget? So our belief is that, and we've seen this work, this isn't just belief, this is actually proven by numerous projects, that if I start by looking at the data that I am collecting now about my customers, and as obvious as this sounds, because it's actually quite hard to do, but if I am able to look at all my customers and say, there are these segments of customers here who for some reason just bought all of their ski equipment with me, and I'm just still using Patagonia as this sort of archetype customer. But if I see that some customers buy all of their running gear with me, somebody else buys all of their ski gear with me, or if I'm a banking client, right? All of these customers for some reason deposit a lot, they transact with me often, they have a checking account, savings account, home equity line of credit, they have their home mortgage with me, and somebody else just has a checking account in the case of a bank, or in the case of retailer, someone just buys a pair of socks and spends $10, right? But someone else spends $2,000 on a full kit for skiing, like everything, right? Pants, jacket, under layers, gloves. Then that's a first step towards understanding, again, who my best customers are. And this approach to looking at dominating my niche, my market, through the lens of data and through the lens of these superfans, I think is important, especially today, because what we see here is that increasingly the conversation is shifting away from creative and channels, and it's increasingly about audiences. And it's probably true that every brand has many clusters of different audiences, of different customers who have slightly different characteristics. And if I think about customers from that lens, then where I spend my dollars and how I communicate with them is adjusted to those audiences and what they need. It's less so about, what's the message and what's the channel. It really starts with who are the people who seem to be most in love with my product, with my brand, and then how do I find them, and then how do I communicate with them.
Well, that's awesome. So for your company, who are the perfect people that you love working with?
You mean as clients, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Well, look, so I think that Delve has a mission, and this is sort of how we talk about ourselves internally, but our reason for existence is to create exceptional value for everyone who delves deeper, right? So to create value for everyone who delves deeper. So who delves deeper? Who interacts with Delve? Well, it's both our team, people who work here. It's the clients we work. Those are typically marketing leaders, but it's also partners. So we have many different partners. We are one of the largest partners of Google Marketing Platform right now in the US. We are a large partner of Amazon advertising as well. So we kind of have these three constituents, these three stakeholders, our team, our clients, and partners. And I think at the end of the day, we love working with people that want to create exceptional value, right? We want to create exceptional value for them. And that means different things to different people. So the people, conversely, that I think find working with us to be most pleasant or working for us, with us, are people who are driven, who have some sort of innate, we call it fire in the belly, determination to succeed in a certain direction. They want to always get better. They want to push themselves. They want to learn about new ways of doing things. They want to create impact, both on themselves and on people around them and on everyone else who depends on them for their own success.
And for those people that have heard what you said and would like to work with you, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, they should go to Delve Deeper, just like delve deeper into delvedeeper.com, and they can just get in touch with multiple people, right, on the team, depending on what their need is. They can email me directly, right, Greg, Greg, at delvedeeper.com if they have something specific that they would like to discuss. They can also find me on LinkedIn, or again, find anyone else from our team on LinkedIn and just message us.
Well, that's awesome. And I do hope that some people will delve in with you. Greg,
Yes.
thanks so much for being with us here on the show today.
Steve, thank you so much and have a great day.
I love this because it's asking you that important question. How does your brand create value for your customers? How are you creating value? What do you do to create value and live as a thriving entrepreneur? Here we go with one last guest here on Thriving Entrepreneur. Join me in welcoming Jason White. Hey, Jason, how you doing today?
What's going on, Steve? How you feel, man?
I'm doing great, thanks. So start us off. Tell us a little bit about you and how you show up in the world.
Yeah, no problem, man. So I'm Jason White, affectionately known as Jay White, first name, last name. I am known for federal government contracting and helping businesses and individuals obtain federal government contracts. And I've been doing that myself since 2008, and I'm from Norfolk, Virginia.
For people who aren't aware of what government contracting is like, can you give us a kind of brief overview of what that's about?
Yeah, it's too easy, man. So federal government contracting is this. The federal government is looking for a small business to procure a product and or a service, and they do it by way of having those companies bid to be awarded the government contract for that product or for that service.
There is a movie that talks about a company that did that, and then they got
Yeah.
into gun running, but that's a whole different story. But do you do things like that? Finding towels and sheets and stuff like that, or what kind of stuff do you specialize in?
Yeah, so I specialize in it all. And I think that's the beauty of the way I teach and do federal government contracting, right? Because the federal government does not pigeonhole you or put you in a box. They will allow you to be in any space that you want to. So since 2008, some of the contracts that my company has been awarded is wig making, construction, real estate, janitorial, landscaping, IT contracts, armed, unarmed security, and the list goes on. We've been involved in a variety of different contracts being awarded because, like I said, on the federal government side, they will not pigeonhole you.
And so, of course, you then aren't both an accountant as well as a construction worker and all those kind of things. You then already have in place, or you go and find the people to do it. How do you typically do that?
Yeah, that's the love. That's another beauty that I love about this industry and the way that I do federal government contracting is because there's a federal, number one, there's a federal facility in all 50 states. So because of that fact, that means wherever the work is, there also is a company that's formulated in that city, wherever that work is, that is prepared to do that expectation and that work from the federal government. So I look for what the work is or the expectation, or in the government contracting world, the solicitation. So I find the solicitation, I look at what the request is, then I partner up with the company that can provide that request, whether it's a product or service, and then we collectively submit that proposal to the government.
Have you ever had anybody ask you, well, what do I need you for, Jason? Why don't I just submit the contract myself?
Steve, absolutely, yes, but that's an easy answer. Most businesses and companies aren't registered to do business with the federal government. That's the first thing. Then number two, most business owners across the country don't have the time or don't want to sift through the federal government jargon. Because of those two reasons and that just that nature, they don't want to sift through that government jargon, will allow for businesses like mine to be in the middleman or middlewoman strategy, because we've already know how to sift through that government jargon to make it easily digestible. So now that company knows exactly what's being asked of them. So of course, some companies come across and say, hey, what do we need you for? But after our conversation gets going, they know exactly why they need us. Plus, our tenure in the business has been since 2008, and it's 2024. So that means we have a valuable track record already going with the federal government.
And I'm sure that because the government's involved, rather than just being, a couple of pages or things like that, I'm sure there's just volumes of paperwork you have to do with each one of those, isn't there?
There's tons of paperwork, man. Like for just to cut some grass, you might get a 90-page document. However, like I said, because of the tenure in this business and how long I've been doing it, and my team, we know and understand exactly what we're looking for and exactly what to look at. Every document or every single word in that document isn't necessarily needed. So because of that factor, we're able to quickly get the proposal in and get it submitted and move on to the next. And I also make sure, when I'm teaching individuals and businesses the same model, that I make sure I teach them, hey, every single document isn't needed. And then, making sure that they know how to sift through the documents just as well as I do.
So with all of those that you've done, and now you're being interviewed and stuff like that, are you more looking for people who you can teach your course to, or are you looking for contractors, or what do you prefer out of, being in an interview with somebody like me on this?
Oh man, I prefer to, number one, just continue to push the message that this business of doing business with the federal government is a sustainable and a reliable one. So it's just, the first thing I prefer is to get the message out, right? Because somebody might be able to understand and get to their next level. And the message of just hearing how easy and transparent it is to do business with the federal government isn't as hard as most people think. So once that message is out, that's my first order of business. The second thing is, obviously, I do have a course. I am teaching individuals how to get into this business for the long term, be sustainable, and make a residual income from doing business with the federal government. So those are two of my main missions when I'm being interviewed by anybody, but especially by you, Steve. And again, thank you for having me on your platform.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, if somebody wants to get into doing this, what is the first thing that they really should know in order to be successful at it?
The very first thing that they should know to be successful is you have to have top tier communication, which means the federal government, unbeknownst to most people that do their YouTube university research, unbeknownst to those individuals, the federal government wants and will always do business with small business. They love to do business with small businesses. So even if you think that something's going wrong, or even if you think something isn't going the way you want it to go, all you have to do is communicate that with the federal government and they will work with you. But most people don't give the communication piece a chance. So the first thing to be highly successful is you have to have your communication together. That's top tier.
Since we talked about YouTube University, what is the biggest misconception that that people are out there teaching that you're like, oh my gosh, somebody taught you that again?
Oh, yes, yeah. Well, it's a lot, man. How much time we got, Steve? It's a lot, but
Well, the number one or the couple.
yes, yes. So that is hard. That's the biggest misconception. Is somebody will say it's not as easy as you're saying it is, but it is. You just have to take the word easy is relative, and I understand that. But you just have to take the time to get through your learning curve. The next thing is I want to that I keep hearing about is that you have to identify what your NAICS code is, and that's NAICS code. You have to identify what your NAICS code is first, and then you can get a contract. That's some of the craziest information I've ever heard on YouTube University because it doesn't work like that. The federal government does not and will not ever care about your NAICS code to prevent you from creating proposals in all different industries. So, Steve, when I hear those two things, man, I just cringe, and it just couldn't be further from the truth.
So, for a person who doesn't want to do all the paperwork, because I'm sure there's a lot out there,
Of course.
how would a company even know that they've got what the government would want, and then potentially work with you?
So that's good. So 9 times out of 10, the companies that don't want to do all the paperwork, that's fine because that's why I teach people to be in the middle of the deal between the federal government and the company that doesn't want to do all the paperwork. But there's a section called the scope of work, which is basically the expectation. It's in every single solicitation. So we're reading that scope of work and we're interpreting that to articulate it to a subcontracting company or a company that just can provide that product or service. So that's how we're of the understanding that this company can do it or this company can't do it because we've already broke down the scope of work, aka the expectation. What is the government asking for? So we broke that down. Now that we know what the government is asking for, okay, the government is asking for 2.5 acres of grass to be cut. So now I know what needs to be done and the volume. Grass needs to be cut and it's 2.5 acres. So that means I can't do it with one lawnmower. I need to reach out to a company that's able to have the bandwidth to cut 2.5 acres of grass. So through the scope of work, that's how we're able to identify which companies to partner up with.
Are there any specific types of companies that you're looking for and the specific areas you're looking for them in right now?
No, not right now. It's crazy. Like I'm always looking in all 50 states. So it's no specific key area and or it's no specific key industry. Now, I will say this. Typically, after every 4 years, we get a new president, or sometimes we get the same president. But during that time, the inauguration time is when there are specific contracts that you can be strategic over because they're more in demand than typical time frames. So I'll give you an example. During inauguration, there's a lot of security contracts. There are a lot of transportation contracts, and there are a lot of IT services contracts every 4 years during inauguration for obvious reasons. But at this very moment, I don't specifically look for anything. I always specifically look for everything.
Oh, I love that. So for the people who want to work with you, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, that's relatively easy. So on Instagram, I can be reached at I am Jason White underscore. Again, that's I am Jason White underscore. And then on the website is the Federal Code, CODE, thefederalcode.com.
Well, that's awesome, Jason. Before I let you go, give us just a couple of words of encouragement about how easy you can make the process of doing it.
Absolutely. So, a little bit more about my background to answer this question. I'm a guy that barely graduated high school. I graduated high school with a 1.9 GPA. I went to college one semester. I'm not an avid reader. I barely graduated from high school, and I don't have patience, and I'm highly successful in federal government contracting. That means you can do it too. The mindset with this business isn't about what you can do. The mindset is what you can manage. Can you manage the company that's going to do the work on your contract, and or can you manage the contract? And the answer is going to be yes. So just take a leap of faith, always bet on yourself. And again, take my motto. If I can do it, you definitely can do it as well.
That's amazing. Well, Jason, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on the show today.
Man, appreciate you, Steve, for having me.
What a great way to be able to take something, learn it, and then share with people. What an amazing way to create value in the world by just simply taking something and getting good at it yourself and then sharing it with others. There's nothing that any of us can't learn, and there's nothing that you're good at that there isn't somebody that's a couple of steps behind us. It's amazing. I mean, sometimes we look at gurus and things like that and we think, oh, they're so far ahead of us. And, we begin to judge ourselves based on other people's journey rather than realizing that there are others that are also, just as much as there are people in front of us, there are people behind us that are looking for us to create value right here where we are right now to help them with the struggles and the journey that they're going on. So I encourage you, be a thriving entrepreneur, create value in all that you do, and really, really celebrate you as you're thriving, because you are uniquely brilliant and you absolutely were created for a purpose. The world so much needs you, and I'm so grateful that you took this time to listen to our 4 guests and to think about some of the kinds of things that you can do in this world to create value so that you can make this world a better place, and so that you too can live as a thriving entrepreneur. Until we're together again next time, thanks for being here, and I hope that you have an amazing week.
Thanks for listening to Thriving Entrepreneur today. If you want to get your question answered, send an email to questions@wehelpyouthrive.com. We look forward to you joining us again next time.
Hi, my name is Steve Kidd. I am a 3rd-generation minister, an international best-selling author of multiple books, and I help people write, publish, and market their books to bestseller. In fact, there are literally thousands of people that have used the system that I created to be able to write, publish, and market their books, and now they're best-selling authors. And you're next. I just wanted to come on for a minute, say hi to you, tell you a little bit about me, introduce myself, and tell you I know the world is waiting on your message, and I would be so honored to be part of sharing your message with the world. Go to AskSteveKid.com and schedule a time to talk today.